First grade teacher, I went and looked it up, was Mrs. Hubble, by the way. I finally figured it out. Charlie knew all 6 of his. I'm convinced I skipped 4th grade. I don't think I had a 4th grade teacher, but I know all the rest of them now. So, thank you. That was good. Life is a journey. We all know that. And on this journey that we call life, like it or not, you will find yourself close to the edge. Walking close to the edge. It's a fine line. Whenever we start thinking about the edge, it's a fine line between success and failure. And often we're walking on that line. The edge of success, the edge of failure. Sometimes we get right to the door and we just can't make it in. Or sometimes we're just walking a fine line to avoid falling out. Maybe it's the edge of happiness or the edge of unhappiness. Sometimes you think, I should be happy, I'm just not. Or sometimes we get to the place where I feel unhappy. It's the edge. You're walking on that edge. Maybe it's the edge of trouble, the edge of wrong crowd, the edge of disappointment, or the edge of heartache. Many times we'll find ourselves right on that edge. Many live on the edge at church, the edge of surrender to God. I don't want to surrender. I kind of like the way I'm living, but I don't want to not be with God. So we find ourselves right on the edge. 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 7 and 8, there you would find out that Lot was living on the edge. It says Lot is a righteous man. It will identify him in the New Testament as a righteous man, tormented by the filthy lives in the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. He's tormented by them. Yet, Lot chose to live on the edge. He stayed there. We'll address that. We've already addressed that once. We'll address it again. So, let's start out by, Lot, why are you here? Why are you here? That would be Genesis chapter 19, verses 1 through 13. We're not going to use all of that. Lot, why are you here? Well, who knows? Who knows why you're here? Verses 12 and 13, let's drop down to them. We're going to work our way back to the top. 2 men said to Lot, do you have anyone else here? Those 2 men are the angels. Say to Lot, do you have anyone else here, son-in-law, sons or daughters, or anyone else in the city who belong to you? Get them out of here, because we are going to destroy this place. The outcry to the Lord against his people is so great that he has sent us to destroy it. Sodom was so wicked that total destruction is the only answer. So wicked that total destruction is the only answer. It's been approximately 20 years since Abraham and Lot have parted company. Approximately 20 years. Abraham has come back. The city of Sodom and Gomorrah were under attack. They fell. Lot was carried off and all of his possessions. Abraham come back and rescued him. Now that had been the perfect opportunity for him to relocate. Obviously this is a bad place. It had been an opportunity for him to relocate. Instead he's right back into the filth of Sodom and Gomorrah. He's been there for 20 years. He has witnessed the evil. He has seen the change that is going to take place. He has witnessed the decay that is going on. The depravity of all who are living there. The city is so evil. Now when it says the cries went up, I don't think those cries were from within the city. They couldn't find 10 righteous people there. So where are the cries from? The travelers that would have been going through, who have been abused in the city. Or maybe other cities, because they've gone back and reported how terrible this place is. The cries have gone up before God to the place where God says he can't tolerate anymore. The twin cities were obviously of some substantial population. There's all sorts of discrepancy. No one really knows. But to think that 50 people that Abraham first bargained for was only a small percentage. Now those 20 years, a righteous man has lived in their midst. But they couldn't find 10 to save the city. If we would go back up to verse 9, we're going to find this. Get out of our way, they replied. This fellow came here as a foreigner and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them. They kept bringing pressure on Lot and moved forward to break the door down. As we move backward, here's what's taking place. The town is in such a depraved situation that they've got these 2 men who have been brought into the town, the angels, And Lot has taken them to stay with him through the night. They were going to stay in the town square, and he says, no, come to my house. And he insisted, so they finally gave in and went with him. He knew that there was no safety in the town square. But the depravity of the town is so bad, and the size of the town, now the word has gone out that there's 2 men in Lot's house. And now they're at the door. And Lot has gone out to meet them. He stepped outside the door, and he he will speak to them. In fact, as he speaks to them, he will address them as friend. Friend. My friends. Don't do this awful thing that you're thinking of. Don't do this awful thing that you have plotted in your mind. He says, why don't you take my daughters? The wicked have no respect for Lot, in verse 9. They have no respect for his word, his offers, or his home. So he has pleaded with them in word and said, don't do this awful thing. And they've moved forward to break the door down because they wanted these men. He said, take my daughters. They've never been with a man. Take my daughters and do with them whatever you want. It makes me think that Lot has realized or recognized these 2 men as more than just 2 ordinary travelers. He knows that they've been sent of God, I personally believe. He said, even take my daughters. No, bring the men out to us. He said, they're under the protection of my roof. In other words, they've come into my home. And my home is to be my sanctuary, and no one should be bothered within my home. I have offered them shelter here. And they moved forward to break the door down. The 2 men reached out and brought Lot back in and secured the door. They said, who are you to be a judge over us? You are an alien here. In other words, you're not one of us. He's lived there for 20 years, and you're not one of us. You're not in our midst. Folks, anytime a good person, a Christian, takes a stand, we're going to be accused of being a judge. Well, who are you to judge us? That's where Lot's at. Not saying he's a Christian. I'm saying, though, that he is a righteous man, we have been told. And they said, who are you to be judging us that you should do this? But he knew the power of the living God. Verse 1, though, is kind of concerning to me. It said, the 2 angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. When he saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. This part of him sitting at the city gates, that concerns me. In the Old Testament, you'll find those that are sitting at the city gates are the elders of the land. That's what it would say in Proverbs 31. Or you might find that they are the businessmen. They do business. They are well known in the city. And here sits Lot at the city gates. Is Lot a city leader in a city of such decay and depravity? So the situation, Lot, what are you doing here? Why are you in this town? It's obvious that there's not been much influence that has been given here. No matter how much you knew God, there's not much influence here. Well, let's look at this then. Lot, what happened? Lot, what happened? We're going to go back into Genesis. We've already covered a little bit of this. In Genesis chapter 13, in verses 5 and 6, here's what it's going to say. Now Lot, who was moving about with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, but the land could not support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. And a quarreling arose, and you remember the scripture, we talked about that. And what happened? Here Lot has been richly blessed. He's been blessed with wealth. He's been blessed with traveling with Abraham on his journey of faith. In Genesis 13, 10, and 11, that'll probably pop up there for you. He has selected the best land and the place with the most water. In Genesis chapter 13, verse 12, whenever they part ways, what's going to take place? He's going to move to the fringe of Sodom and Gomorrah. He's moved towards a city of corruption. And now it seems, if we were to go back up into chapter 19, it seems that he's no longer living on the fringe. He's moved right downtown. He's moved right into the midst of it. Lot is keeping company with unsavory people. He's keeping company with those that are going to lead to destruction. Now it seems as though living right in the midst, his impact is even less. Today, many people, folks, keep company or companions, maybe old friends that would pull you down. You know, sometimes those old friends that we have who have not come to church, who have not surrendered to the Lord, and we continue to have that companionship with them, what do? They pull us away. We spoke earlier about today is the lowest attendance Sunday of the year. Now, I know a couple people know. Does anyone else know why? Super Bowl Sunday. They don't play till 8 tonight. And people use it as an excuse not to be in church. Now, if they'd played at 8 last night, it might have been harder to get up. But they play tonight. Lowest attendance of the year. Now, some churches will have a big deal with it, and we don't. A big party tonight for Super Bowl. And that's fine. That's all right. But company, how many times has someone said, let's go to this place or that? We can miss a Sunday. What are they doing? They're pulling us out. Pulling us out. Pulling us away. And you're trying to make a commitment. You're trying to change your life. And you've been trying to get out of that circle. And they say, well, oh, come on. What's one more drink? Or what's one more time together? And we find ourselves in such a mess. See, Lot thought he might change them. Maybe, I'm going to give Lot the benefit of the doubt, maybe he thought he could save this city and change it. Well, you see how well that worked for him. And for all of you who think you're going to change that circle of friends without moving out of it, that circle that's trying to pull you down, how's that working for you? How well is that working out? It doesn't, folks. So we find that we've got a situation, and I'm not saying quit witnessing to them. I'm not saying don't keep inviting them. I'm saying that you've got to find a new strength, a new source of strength. And that source of strength is in God. And sometimes whenever you need that source of strength, how's the best way to get it? Well, I put myself around Christian people that will help me, that will encourage me. And whenever I stumble, they're there to help pick me up instead of saying, let me pull you on down. That, folks, is the difference between success and failure. That's the difference between living on the edge and living in the middle of the church. If you're just living on the fringes of the church, you're in trouble. Let me encourage you, move on in. Because you can be in trouble just living on the fringes. And if you're living on the fringes of the world, trust me, they're saying, move on in. Just like Lot did into Sodom. He moved on in. There's some serious issues that are taking place. Now, you kind of get the idea of the scripture where we're at and what's going on. Lot's in a mess. I don't care how you slice it, he's in a mess. 2 angels have just shown up. Now that's the key. I want everyone to hear point 3. Genesis chapter 19, verses 15 and 16. We're going to say this. With the coming of the dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, hurry! Take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished. When he hesitated, the men grasped his hand and the hand of his wife and of his 2 daughters and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. The next statement I make is going to make some of you mad. So make sure you all get it correct, for all of you who won't like it. All right? God will let you, a good person, go down with the ship. If you think Lot not leaving Sodom and Gomorrah would have saved it, you're wrong. He would have went down with the ship. It doesn't mean he was necessarily lost, but the city was doomed. God had already set the course for it. But every time something is going to happen, God provides a way out. He will not let you be doomed without giving you a way to get out first. Many people have asked through the years, why did God let this happen to me? They didn't get out. I want you all to think about maybe a situation that you're in life. Do you need out of it? And if you don't get out of it, what's going to happen? How many times do we hear about an innocent person at a party that's going to be raided and they shouldn't be there? You ever hear of anyone? I know a couple people who told me we were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and now it's called lawyer. Get a lawyer. How many times do we see that happening? You can go down for being in the wrong place, folks. It can happen. As a Christian, there comes a time whenever I have to say that circle no longer works for me. I am no longer able to have fellowship with this group because I can't be in that midst. I can no longer go into a place like that because I can't be in that midst. God is giving you an opportunity to hurry. Hurry. Get out of this. If there's something in your life that you need to part company with, hurry! Don't go back to it. Get out of it. If you're living in the midst of bad things, get out. Do not hesitate. Why hesitate? Why did Lot hesitate? Folks, he has an investment. He owns a nice town and a nice house in downtown Sodom. Sounds wonderful. See how that works on a real estate program. He's got a nice house. He's got a business probably. He's sitting at the city gate. He's invested in the city. And he's thinking, I got to make all these changes. I can't do that. And he hesitates. But a person of God grabbed him and starts pulling him out. If you feel like one of your Christian friends is being pushy, maybe they're not being pushy, maybe they're grabbing and pulling. Some will think the sermon's too harsh. I'm telling you that it's more important that I not lose my soul than not to lose a friend of the past. And I'm encouraging all of you to be there. It's something that we have to do. Change is not easy. So let me ask you this question today. Are you hesitant to be saved? And you say, well, no, I want to be saved. I want to be with God. I want to be a Christian. Then why do you hesitate, dear brother? Why do you linger? Are you negotiating? They tried that and that didn't work. Are you like Lot's wife? Are you looking back? And you saw what happened to her. Now I'm not going to say you're going to turn into a pillar of salt. But you might turn into something you don't want to be. God wants us to escape from those circumstances. Hurry. Don't hesitate. That's the whole message of this chapter. Hurry. Don't hesitate. Sin is at the door. Well, what's going to take place? The conclusion says, smoke in the valley. Smoke in the valley. Genesis chapter 19, verses 23 through 28. By the time Lot reached Zoar, the sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah. From the Lord out of the heavens it would come. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all the living in the cities, also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and returned to the place where he had stood before the Lord. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward the land of the plain, and he saw dense smoke rising from the land like smoke from a furnace. Now, if you look this up and go home and Google it, it's going to tell you that it was on an earthquake situation. It's going to tell you that there was an eruption underneath. And you believe all that you want to. It says it rained down fire from heaven from God, and that works for me. It says it rained down fire from heaven. And it destroyed everything. Today there's no vegetation there. There's no living things there. Many believe that it's a part of the Dead Sea, but the whole area around it, you can't go in, it can't sustain life. It was thoroughly destroyed. And Abraham looked down and saw smoke in the valley. I want to tell you what that might have been like that day. We've got a little skit for you before I close. I want to let you know what it might have been like that day in Sodom and Gomorrah.
And now the weather forecast for Sodom and Gomorrah region. It looks like it's going to be a scorcher. Fire will continue to rain from heaven for most of the day, followed by a steady downpour of brimstones. If you've got them, now would be a good time to get out the steel umbrellas and the asbestos pajamas, folks. Temperatures could climb well into the 1,000-degree mark. This is one major heat wave. Health officials are strongly urging the elderly, the infirm, and basically anybody who doesn't want to get charbroiled to stay indoors. If you simply must go outside, we're recommending a sunblock with an SPF of at least 420. Travelers to this area are being advised to make alternate plans. Ladies and gentlemen, we just received word that the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah have been completely destroyed. Only one family has escaped, a man named Lot, his wife, and children. Apparently, they had been warned by angels of the Lord to flee the city. That's right, angels. And all we've got is Doppler radar. We have a correction, folks. Apparently, Lot's wife did not escape the destruction. She's been found on the hill overlooking the city. We're receiving reports that she's been turned into... Wait a minute, folks. It must be a misprint. It says here that Lot's wife was instructed not to turn back and look upon the burning cities. She couldn't resist the temptation and now has been turned into a pillar of salt. That's what it says here, a pillar of salt. Eyewitnesses said her last words were something like, "Come on, Lot, just one look. God won't care." Well, folks, apparently God did care. This is Hans Bifford signing off now and reminding you that if God says don't do something, don't do it. Disobedience will always cost you more than you can count on. God wanted Lot's wife to be the salt of the earth, but she chose to disobey and become a pillar of it instead.
I always like those special reports. That was good, thank you. So what happens whenever there's smoke in the valley? Well, here's what happened this time. Sin destroyed something beautiful. Remember what had been said about that area? It was the plushest, it was the richest, it was the best land and the best water that had been selected. But it was also a place that was overrun with sin and a denial of God. Total destruction. Total destruction. Here's the next thing to remember. Jesus offers a way out. But hurry. How do we know that tonight it won't rain fire and brimstone? How do we know what day that will be? Now, if the people of Sodom and Gomorrah had really believed that the end would come, do we believe they would have stayed? Or do we think they might have gotten out? Were all of them so lost that they wouldn't have said, maybe? Well, there's two men on a journey. A man named Abraham and a man named Lot. Abraham, he's going to make mistakes in life. He's going to do things that he shouldn't do. But he's always going to stay in touch with God. Abraham will be remembered for all time until the coming of the Lord as the father of faith. There's a man named Lot that went on the journey as well. Now Lot, he must have had some faith. He was aware of the faith of Abraham. He would have been there whenever Abraham built altars. He would have seen how God had fulfilled His promise and blessed them richly. But a man named Lot, even though Peter would write and say he was a righteous man, a man named Lot will never be remembered so much as being a righteous man if they read the Old Testament. If I say Lot, you won't say righteousness. What will you say? Sodom and Gomorrah. One will be known for a journey of faith, and one will be known for a city of decay. One will be known as a man who made mistakes but yet walked with God. One will be known as a man who, this will be the last we hear of Lot. His life is going to spiral down from here. He's going to go live in a cave and be the father of his grandchildren. He's going to spiral down. One will be remembered as a man who trusted God even in the bad days. One will be remembered as a man who hesitated. And someday at a family meeting, they'll sit and say, Mike was a good guy, or Mike hesitated. The family will assemble, and the verdict will be given. But not just for Mike, but for everyone else here. For everyone. The day will come when we'll be known as the person who walked with God. We may not have always done it right, but we walked with God. Or a person who, well, I've got an investment and a circle of friends. Will you please stand as we have our invitation?